One of my top contenders for shoe of the year this year is the Topo Specter 3. So, would you believe it if I told you that the Topo Specter Elite is even better?
Much like a ghost. The spirit collector.
5 miles and change into the run. This is definitely a fast shoe. I just hit a 6:21 pace mile and I'm cruising right now. It feels a lot like the Spectre, but with a plate. Just ran into somebody wearing the Speedland shoes. I can't remember which model they were. I couldn't tell at least. But it was cool. He's training for an ultra right now. And I've just been chugging along in the Specter Elite.
The spirit collector from the dead coast. Here comes the Spectre, one like a ghost. The spirit collector from the dead coast. Here comes the Spectre.
One of the things I don't want to forget to mention, despite the fact that it's windy today, is that it feels like these are almost enforcing a heel strike, which is very odd. Because most shoes, even like really high drop shoes, don't do that to me. It's rare where I feel like that's what I have to do. And I don't know if the footage is going to reflect it, but that's just what it's feeling like. But that's not come at the expense of really any pace, where I've hit a couple miles in the sixes, and like I think the quickest was still the 6:20 something mile. But even right now I'm moving at a 7:20 pace and it feels pretty relaxed. So these are crazy good. Oh, and the other thing, there's on one of the shoes on the lateral side of the left shoe where the label is for the sizing, it's rubbing the heck out of my foot, like my ankle area, driving me insane right now.
One like a ghost, the spirit collector from the dead coast. Here comes the Spectre, one like a ghost, the spirit collector from the dead
14 miles, 750 pace. There are some great things about this shoe that make it stand out as a potential for an immediate candidate for my next race. Like, it's possible that even after the first run that I run my next marathon in this. The things that are holding me back from that is that there is this slightly unnatural heel strikiness to the shoes that I don't know if I've ever experienced before. It really feels like, it kind of feels like the Spectre also, and it feels like I hit lower back on that, but it's just more noticeable on the Elite for me. But I'm able to get through my stride a little bit more quickly in this, so it's not as much of a like jiggly mess as the Spectre, which, I mean, I say jiggly mess with fondness because I love the Spectre. Like, really one of my favorite shoes this year, if not my favorite shoe this year, but the heel is a jiggly mess for me. And this fixes that issue. It's more stabilized in the heel, but it feels like I'm hitting even further back in this, which is just not my norm. I do think as I've gotten stronger as a runner, I've progressed from like tiptoe running to more midfoot specifically, like across all shoes. And maybe that's what I'm experiencing. I'm really curious to see what the footage looks like on this. So that's one thing that like feels just slightly unnatural to me, but the longer I got into the run, the less I was thinking about it, probably just because I got used to it over the course of the run. The other thing, I have to figure out what's going on with this size label on the inside of the shoe, because it was tearing up the side of my ankle, like right underneath the ankle bone. Was getting so irritated, the skin there, and it could just be a matter of switching to thicker socks, but oh man, was that annoying. It has the potential, should be fixable, it should be a fixable thing, but it has the potential to completely ruin the shoe. That's how annoying it was by the end of the run, and I can't feel it so much right now because there's not as much movement going on as I'm pacing back and forth here, but yeah, that was super annoying. Otherwise, no lockdown issues. No forefoot rubbing, no toe rubbing, no black toes. The size 9.5, which I was definitely nervous about, is completely fine. Because I'm in between sizes. I'm in between a 10 and a 9.5. That worked completely fine for me in a 9.5. It was a gamble because people had reported that this fits slightly narrower than the Specter 3. And of course, it's a racing shoe, so that would make sense. But that's actually not my experience of it. This fits the same width exactly to basically millimeters of the same width of the Specter 3. So I'm very glad about that. Really excited that I got the sizing right on this. And it's way more stable than the Specter 3 for sure. I think I'm just going to need to do a full comparison because otherwise I'm going to be yapping about the two shoes for the duration of this recap. But what I'm getting from the Specter Elite is crazy bounce, like really fantastically good bounce. A foam that holds up over the course of the run. Now, I didn't go super long. That was only 14. So it's like a pretty normal run for me. It would be a test to see how it holds up into 20. But there was like no fatigue whatsoever in the foam. So there's no way that this is going to fatigue with an additional 6 to 12 miles of distance under it. It just doesn't seem like that's the type of compound we're dealing with. Their ATPU is crazy. It's so good. It's such a good compound. It's hard to tell. I think other reviewers have struggled with this, whether or not this is the same exact ATPU as was in the Specter 3. And I'm kind of thinking it is the same, but the plate does quite a lot to stabilize it. But then when you push it in, it does feel slightly firmer. But is that just the plate? So that's why people, I'm guessing, have gone back and forth on it. And I sort of see what the discourse is there because it feels firmer underfoot to me. Like I would call the Specter 3 a soft shoe. Not everybody called the Specter 3 a soft shoe, but I would say it's soft. And I would not say the Specter Elite is soft. I would say it's on the firmer side. Or like, I don't know, if you hit in the heel, it's still bouncy and like a little jiggly. But yeah, this is a fried recap. There's so much going on right now. And with that, back to the studio.
I wanna do it 'cause it's fun.
In the studio with the Topo Specter Elite, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about the run today. It was 14 miles. I did it pretty quickly with all of the camera shots and all things considered. I was hitting some pretty decent pace, got some marathon pace miles in there, as well as some target marathon pace miles, and in between the two, as well as a few miles in the low sevens and some even on the slower side around 9-minute pace. So I put this through a full range of testing on this run. I got to have a nice conversation with somebody training for an ultra. I always love meeting fellow runners who are mileage junkies out on the roads. Before we get into the details of the ride of the Specter Elite, we are first going to talk about the specs and materials. The Specter Elite has 39 millimeters of stack height in the heel and 34 in the forefoot for a 5-millimeter drop. I feel like we're seeing more and more 5-millimeter drop shoes in the marathon racing shoe category, or maybe that's just me. Let me know in the comments if I'm observing something that's real or not. Like the Meta Speeds, the new Ultra shoe is lower drop, and of course the Specter Elite with the 5-millimeter drop. I think that works really well for a racing shoe. I know nobody asked. The foam is Topo's Rev Foam, which is an aliphatic TPU, and it's a great foam. It has a carbon plate, which does not scoop down crazy low. It scoops down low. There are certain plate geometries that come down really, really low in the shoe. This is seemingly in the middle of the foam, and the reason I can say that with some confidence, even though I can't exactly see it, is you can sort of see it on the bottom of the shoe, but feeling it and pushing it into the bottom of the outsole, I cannot feel where the plate and the foam are touching my thumb when I'm pushing in, which means something that happens to me a lot in these very scooped plated shoes. Sometimes a rock can come through and compress and pinch the foam in between the bottom of the shoe and the plate in the forefoot. I do not think that will ever happen in this shoe because there's ample foam between the ground and the plate. So I like the way that they designed the plate positioning in the Specter Elite. Otherwise, it's pretty much a standard carbon plate. This weighs 208 grams in a size 9.5, which is pretty good. The upper is this very open engineered mesh. The outsole is rubber, and the tongue is not gusseted, but there are 2 eyelet holes that keep the tongue in position. We'll go into price in more detail later, but this is $250, which is nice to see in 2026. Now we're going to talk about fit. I have this in a size 9.5. It works in a size 9.5. Most of my shoes are in a size 10. So I wouldn't consider this a half size down for me, as some of my shoes are a 9.5. And given the very specific fit of the Topo forefoot area and the fact that for a 9.5 for me, the main reason that doesn't work is a lack of width. This is why I decided to go with a 9.5, and I'm happy with that decision because my feet are not long enough to warrant going to a 10, but they're too wide for a 9.5 generally. And Topo fixes that by having an anatomical shaped toe box. It's almost like all shoes should fit like this so that people with normal feet that are slightly wider in the forefoot can wear the correct length of shoe that they should be wearing. So this fits well in a size 9.5, but that is the smaller of my 2 sizes. I don't know that I would advocate for you to size down. I'm just sharing my experience with sizing so that you get an idea of how to size, not what to size. Now it's time to talk about the ride. And first, I want to go over something that I mentioned in the recap and that I was experiencing towards the end of the run. I was getting this rubbing on the side of my ankle underneath my ankle bone. I thought it was coming from the sizing label on the inside of the shoe. The sizing label is on the medial side of both shoes, so it was not that, but it was the rim of this fabric here that was rubbing up against the underside of my ankle bone. And I don't know if it's like blood that bled through my sock onto the fabric of this shoe, but it looks like blood. And it's not the socks because I was wearing purple and pink socks. So I don't know what's good with that. I really hope that that does not persist as an issue. Maybe it was just not tied enough where there was some like open air in between my foot and the rim of the upper of the ankle collar. But that's not a good sign. That if that were to persist over continued testing with this shoe, it would make it so that this is basically unusable. That's how annoying it was towards the end. It was not quite on the scale of pain, but of irritation for sure. And I was really not pleased with that part of the experience today. That being said, that was the only issue that I had with this shoe. Like, I didn't have a single other problem. I noticed, I'm going to get out in front of all of the negatives up front because the rest of this is going to be very positive because this is a really fantastic shoe. The other thing that I was noticing was a little weirdness surrounding how far back this seems to want me to land on the platform. I don't know. I haven't looked at my B-roll yet. I don't know if that will substantiate the feeling that I was running on the heel a bit more than I normally would, but it sure felt like I was landing much further back on the platform, even at quicker paces where normally I'm really far forward on the forefoot at quicker paces and even at middle ranged paces. And so it was just a little awkward at first for me. But then I was running, mid 6 to high 6 to low 7 miles and not really thinking too much about it by the end. So it was only really in the beginning through maybe 2/3 of the way through the run that I was really focused and fixated on this phenomenon. And then I sort of forgot about it and started running with whatever natural, I just stopped thinking about it. So I was running as naturally as I could be towards the latter third of the run. All right, so there's your negatives. Here's all the positives. This foam is very bouncy. It is a very good compound. And it's crazy that Topo, who has previously used branded P-backs. So buying their foam from a brand name like Arkema P-backs product that is probably like boutiquely crafted, and they have very little control over the compound there because it is a brand named compound, right? And they only use that a couple times in a couple of shoes, the previous version of the Spectre and in the Cyclone 2 and 3, I think. And then the rest of their shoes, as far as I know, are basically EVA. Maybe some supercritical EVA in there and whatever, but to go from pretty rudimentary foams to whatever formulation of ATPU this is just like screws my head a little bit. It's mind-boggling how they got such a great compound so quickly and just sort of hit the ball out of the park on their first swing. Like they're coming up to the major leagues with both a super trainer for $170 and a fully fledged carbon plated racing shoe for $250, which is low for a carbon plated racing shoe these days. Not that I'm thrilled about that, but the fact is, this is like one of the cheaper racing products that you could buy for the marathon. And this foam is incredible. It's a great, great compound. Now, the question of whether or not this is the same exact ATPU as is in the Spectre is still anybody's guess. To me, it feels firmer for sure underfoot. Is it just the plate that's making it feel firmer? I don't really know. It could be also that the foam is tuned a little bit firmer, but either way, expect a less jiggly, more stable, and firmer ride overall in the Spectre Elite. That is still comfortable. It's like not sacrificing anything in comfort here, where I think that this could go probably past the marathon in terms of comfort and bounce without fatigue, which I already know from the Spectre 3 that the foam does not really fatigue very much. And I've taken that shoe pretty far multiple times even. So even though I only tested this for 14 today, I could picture a world in which this doesn't fatigue over 26.2 at all and is comfortable for the duration of a marathon. Another thing I noticed out on the run was how stable this felt, especially turning corners. Now, this is not a stability shoe or anything, but I was able to take some pretty tight turns at high speeds today. And that's something that I really do look for in a marathon racing shoe because I run a lot of my workouts not in a straight line. There's a lot of turns. It's a city. Any race is going to have a couple of turns at least for the most part. And the ones that I'm particularly interested in, like I like a route for a race with a little bit more turning going on because I'm not an elite. I'm not trying to get my straight line best speed. I know that I could PR faster in a course that had fewer turns, but overall, I just think that turning and going in multiple directions breaks up the run a little bit more and is more enjoyable. So I like a shoe that can handle those sharper turns without having to slow down. And that's something that I got from the Spectre Elite today. Another thing the shoe made me realize is just how much carbon can offload your calves. Where today, this is a 5mm drop, so you'd expect to some degree that it would work your calves a little bit more, perhaps. But because of the level of rigidity and because of this rocker, it felt like I didn't even really have to use my calves at all. And I don't normally feel that. It's hard to know or feel when your calves are being offloaded or any muscle group, to be honest. It's just not something that I think my brain is attuned to. But today I felt it. I felt like, wow, this is really easy on my calves. But I think maybe that was also part of the landing further back on the platform that I was experiencing, where if I'm landing further back on the heels, it would make sense that my calves were also offloaded more. Which all goes to say, this adds up to a very cohesive package. It's so comfortable, easy to get along with, and rocks you through your stride effortlessly, and seems to have a somewhat prescriptive ride whilst being stable. Pile on top of that this is some of the best racing foam in the game right now. The weight is reasonable. We'll talk about the weight. It fits perfectly. It has great lockdown. It has the right type of laces. It has ample padding in the heel collar. It has a wide toe box in the very far forefoot. I don't know what to tell you guys. This is a phenomenal shoe. It's a very cohesive package. As for the weight, the 208 grams in a size 9.5 is not unreasonable to me. Up until today, I was planning on running probably my next race in the Chowdan Plaid 3, which is, I think, 220 or so, or maybe 225, somewhere in that range. I can't remember offhand, but it is heavier than this. Granted, I have that in a size 10, but I have no problem with a shoe up until a certain weight. If it feels too heavy, then of course, maybe I'll race in something else. But this is not an unreasonable weight for a racing shoe. It is on the higher end for the top tier racing shoes. But if I compare the way this feels on my foot versus the Metaspeed Edge Tokyo, even after 14 miles, A and B right next to each other for a similar type of run, this is going to be more comfortable than that shoe. And this is going to be bouncier than that shoe. And it might even be faster than the Edge Tokyo. I'd have to test it to find out. But all of the other factors that go into making the Specter Elite the shoe that it is, I think far outstrip things like the DV8 Nitro Elite 4 and the Metaspeed Edge Tokyo and these, 180 gram shoes for comfort and cohesion. And when you look at similarly weighted shoes like the Adios Pro 4, I don't think that shoe is as comprehensive or as cohesive as the Topo Specter Elite is. And I think it has a lot more stability issues and fit issues overall than the Specter Elite. And frankly, I don't know if it's as fast as this. This does have some get up and go. I don't know if it's going to be the ideal half marathon shoe, but I think that they were aiming for a dead center marathon performance racing shoe. They hit the ball out of the park on that, and that's just the truth. It's such a shame that the heel collar was digging into the underside of my ankle. I'm curious if anybody else has experienced that so far. I think I could probably solve it with thicker socks, but I don't like wearing socks to a shoe. I like a shoe to not cause me issues no matter what. Another example of this is the Metaspeed Edge Tokyo, where I have to wear a specific set of socks with that in order for it to work. And then it works just fine, but then it makes me less likely to just lace that shoe up when I'm trying to go out for a session, because it's like, oh, what if that thing that happens to me in that shoe happens again on this session, because even if I'm wearing the right socks, right? And so I need to play with this. Maybe it was just not tied tightly enough and it was just wiggling around. I know I'm repeating myself, but I'm really hoping that that doesn't stay a persistent issue, because of all things to ruin a shoe, for me, that would be such a tragedy. And I don't think it will. I think I'll be able to resolve that. I typically am pretty tinkery when it comes to any very oddly specific shoe issues. And I do aim to resolve that so that I could run perhaps multiple races in this. To summarize the ride: bouncy, rockered, fast. Now we're going to talk about the price, and this comes in at $250, which is unfortunately a pretty good price for carbons in the West. Of course, the Chinese market exists, and I know you all know this already, but you could get carbons from China for like half the price. But if you're comparing the West to the West and the East to the East, this is a very good deal. Again, unfortunately, in this day and age of 2026, carbons are just sneaking up past the 250 to the 265, 275, $300 mark. And the only thing we could do as consumers to combat this problem is to not buy those shoes at those prices. And for my own position here on ShoeTube, I don't buy those shoes at those prices. Anything that is priced at over 250 for a carbon, I don't buy at that price, because I do think that is grotesquely inflated. So this is what carbon should be priced at. I think it's very fairly priced compared to the rest of the market especially. And for the performance that you're getting in this shoe, I mean, it really is that good. Who is the Topo Specter Elite for? To me, this is for anybody that's wide foot curious. If you like a wider toe box, you want your toes to splay on the run, but you need a racing shoe for your upcoming marathon, this is a no-brainer. Now, it might be somewhat of a brainer once I get a chance to try the Vanish Carbon 3 from Ultra. That'll be the battle of the wide footers, and we will cover that. But the use case for this shoe is not limited to people that are looking for a wide foot friendly carbon. I think that anybody could get along with this. And if you're in the market for a brand new carbon plated racing shoe in 2026 and you are looking for something that prioritizes comfort and not at the expense of speed, this might actually be the shoe for you. All right, thank you all very much for your attention to the Topo Specter Elite. And as always, stay in motion. The ending like this can't be good for you. Whoa.